Sometimes I think what we're doing here at worship, it's too polished. It would have been back, really up until around 400 years ago or so, whenever we started building cathedrals and things like this in Europe, so maybe 500, 600, 700 even years ago, it would have been that you would have gone to one of our homes, and we would have hung out in our home. We would have had a meal, and it probably would have been one of the more wealthy of us, because that meal would have had to have been provided, and more importantly, the wine would have had to have been provided. And then from that meal, of course, there would have been wine, and of course, there would have been bread. We would have taken that bread and that wine, and we would have had communion. And then after we had communion, we would have sang, which for the time was pretty silly. And then we would have left by sharing the peace. And by then, anybody who wasn't a Christian wouldn't have been in that environment. They would have left. And they would have heard that all these Christians were getting together and they were kissing each other. And that's actually how Christianity started off, as a love cult. Interestingly enough, they weren't wrong. Of course, they thought it was a different kind of love. But we're going to go somewhere else with that today. When we look at what we do here, we're really polished. And I actually think that it's a problem. It's a problem because you look at the building and you think, okay, the church has it all got going on, right? The air conditioning was on before you got here. The lights were on before you got here. The doors were open before you got here. The band was polished. We have our songs. We're polished. With the screens, John knows what he's doing. He's amazing back there. You just show up. You kind of come to worship and everything works out really well. It feels a lot like any other production that you might experience if you went to a play or if you go to the movies or anything else like that. That church is somehow consumable. The bulletins have already been printed for you. The chairs have already been set up. The paramounts have already been changed. The colors change. The cookies have been bought. The coffee has been made. The communion is set up. It's all perfect. It's all ready for you just to show up and take and be good. And I want you to realize that all those things don't matter. Not a one of them. Not any of them. We can go to Walmart right now, buy some bread, buy some wine, have some communion, and we'll be good. God will be worshiped. That all these other things are just trappings. And that these trappings are called trappings because they trap you into a mindset to think that somehow they matter. Oh, the band was good. I like the band. I like the music. That means that I like church. I'm going to continue going to that church. Oh, the sermon was good. I really liked what he said. That means that I'm going to keep going to that church. I hope you realize it's ridiculous that my sermon should be good, ever. Because at some point, somebody right now needs to be challenged. Somebody's faith is dwindling. They're laying on their laurels. They've been hanging out for a while, and they need me to challenge them in their faith to take the next step so that they might enter into God's kingdom, that they might fulfill what He has called for them to do. At the same time, somebody else needs support. Their entire world has fallen apart. The wheels are coming off, and they don't know where up and down is, and they're just lost, and they need support. And at the same time, somebody else is in the Maytag machine, and they're getting flipped and turned all kinds of other ways, but they don't need support. They actually need to be told that that's not God's plan, that suffering is a part of what God's plan is. And in this congregation right now, there are many of you who are at different stages and other stages that I'm not even bringing up, and it's ridiculous to think that my sermon might be good, because it can only be good for one person. It can't be good for all of you. So if you think that somehow that I'm bringing something good, that the thing that I'm doing is entertaining, it absolutely can't be. And whenever you ever think that I had a good sermon, what you need to understand is the Holy Spirit has moved you. I've had people come up to me and say, "Pastor, your sermon was amazing." I thought, "Wow, what did you hear?" And they'll tell me what they heard, and it was the exact opposite of what I preached. It happens. And it happens so frequently that I know that what I'm giving you has nothing to do with whatever I'm saying right now. That y'all will interpret the words coming out of my mouth however you need to hear them, which is the only way that it could possibly be, because I can't tell you how to interpret. That's impossible. What's really impossible is to think that we came to worship for ourselves. That's not why we're worshiping. Worship is not about us. It's not about what we get out of worship. If you came to worship because you thought that you might be fulfilled today, if you came to worship because you were hoping that we would sing a song, or if you came to worship for anything about yourself, then I hope that you feel that you've been fulfilled, but the reality is at some point you won't be. The sermon will stink. The songs will stink. The building was hot. The building was cold. The babies were crying. The whatever, the fill in the blank. Worship will not be satisfying for you if you come for you. And then what will happen is that sin, which is what that is, will push you just a half hair away from why you came to worship. Too many half hairs, and soon enough you won't bother with worship anymore. This is what happened when Jesus walked into the temple. The purpose of the temple was to give an offering. That was the purpose. That was what worship looked like. In fact, when we talk about what we're doing here, really, there's only two things that we do to God. One is sing songs in His praise. The other one is the offering plate. Well, the Jews didn't sing songs, so the only thing they had was an offering plate. And that's what they were doing. When Jesus came in, they were taking money. Okay, so at the time, you got this big Roman Empire, and on that coin was an engraven image of Caesar's head. You can't bring that into the temple. So what do you have to do? You have to exchange that Roman coin for a temple coin. So now you have another piece of coin that can go into that temple. Great. Okay, somebody took a cut. Now you're in the temple, you've got your coin, and you can buy with that coin a dove or a goat, or if you're rich, a bull. And the whole purpose is so that you can take that animal and fulfill what God has told you to do. Make an offering, literally a sacrifice. Kill an animal, drain its blood. Literally, some priest is going to throw that blood around. They're going to throw it on the fire. You're going to get a hunk back. A little hunk is going to go to that priest and his family so he can eat, and the rest gets burnt up to God. It's an offering. It's a sacrifice. That's all they were doing there. And there's nothing wrong with it. Not a lick. So why was Jesus so mad? Why was he throwing money around? I mean, if you can imagine all this table and he just flips the money over. Whoo! I defy you. Go to Walmart, and when that till opens up, grab it and throw the money around. You know what's going to happen. They're not going to ask you why you did that. They're just going to haul you downtown. Yeah. So why was Jesus so mad? He was mad because the temple and what people were doing there was worship. And it was an opportunity to show God that you loved Him. And the very first step before the people ever left their home was to show God, I only kind of love you. Which is to say that they took their goat, their sheep, their bull, their whatever they had, and they sold it for money. Why? Well, because it's easier to move money. If you're going to travel a long way with a goat, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be a pain in your back. So here's what I'll do. Before I leave my hometown, I'm going to sell my goat. I'm going to get the cash. Then I can walk real easy to the temple in Jerusalem, however far that is, take that cash, exchange it for the temple gold, go in and buy the goat. This is a great system, right? Now I don't have to walk with a goat. Well, it's wrong, Jesus says, because the opportunity to show your love is to have to drag a goat around. And all of a sudden, the people of Israel decided that they weren't going to take that opportunity. So from the very beginning, they decided they didn't want to bother worshiping God. They just wanted to go through the motions. This is why Jesus was upset, because that they were selfish, they were lazy, and they didn't want to bother. People have come from all over the land of Egypt, and none of them bothered. None of them brought a goat. Maybe some of them brought a sheep, and for them, Jesus would have been happy. But He didn't attack them. He attacked the money changers, the system that made it easy for them to continue to do what they were doing, to help them go through the motions. Because for those people who were coming into the temple, worship was personal. It wasn't something they shared or cared about for anybody else. It was an obligation they were going through, because they had felt some kind of a guilt trip from God. They had to go and do this. And Jesus was fed up. He was fed up with the system that was helping them do this. He was fed up that they were going through the motions. And He said, I will destroy this system. Now, for the Jews' part, they stopped and they said, what do you mean you're going to destroy it? Because at least they had the presence of mind to say, maybe this is a man of God. See, if Jesus gives us a sign, these Pharisees, Sadducees, all the priests, all the people of Israel, if He gives us a sign, then He's allowed to do this. Otherwise, we're going to get Him. He didn't give them a sign. So those words, I will destroy this temple, those are the ones that were charged against Jesus, or will be charged against Jesus, on the night in which he was betrayed. The words that he spoke in that temple today as he overthrew that money were the ones that will kill him. I will destroy this temple. They'll bring it back up. They'll wash their hands and they'll say, what more proof do we need? They hated his answer. And his answer sealed his death. They condemned him to hell, literally. They didn't want to know if he was right. They didn't care if he was right. They wanted their system. It was easy. It made them feel good. And they want to perpetuate that feeling. Worship, for them, was a consumable. The temple was set up. It took years to set up. The priests were there. They knew their part. The money changers and all the little people around the system made it easy to do. You could just go in, exchange your money. You walked your goat 10 feet. Somebody took it from you. You did your job, and now you could leave. It didn't mean anything. The people didn't fear God. They used him. They wanted to be seen as holy. They wanted to make themselves feel better. They wanted to make others feel worse. Let's be clear about that. Church is absolutely an opportunity to make others feel worse, and the Jews loved it. They thought themselves holier than thou, and when they looked at all the worthless pagan Romans and all the worthless pagan Greeks and all the things that they did, they knew that they were better than them because they sacrificed, because they went to worship. And the truth is today that we forget whose we are, who we are, and why we are. And that is why churches die. Churches forget why they're here, which is not to be a church. It's not to have an entertainment time. It's not to be seen going to church. It's not even to make you feel good. That's not the purpose of church. Church is an entertainment. It's not an obligation. It's not for us. It's a worship opportunity to order our life. Worship has one function: to worship. It might have other side effects. Those are wonderful things. You've heard all the commercials, all the drug commercials, and all the horrible side effects. Well, the side effects of Jesus end up that you have a better life, that you find friends and a place and meaning and all these wonderful things. Worship has beautiful side effects, but it has only one function, which is to worship, which means that this thing that we're doing is not a game. The Lord God is not one among many. Worshiping Him is not a part-time job. It's not an excuse for jewelry or artwork. He is to be feared because He's awesome. In Exodus, you read all the 10 Commandments. Nick read them for us. And we stopped short of my very favorite verse, if only in Exodus, but maybe my favorite verse in the entire Bible. This is Exodus 20:20, so you can see clearly. Exodus 20:20. Do not be afraid, for God has come only to test you and put the fear of Him upon you so that you do not sin. Let me say that another way. Don't be afraid, fear God. It seems like a silly thing to say. Don't be afraid, fear. But the simple sentence is this: if you fear God, there's nothing else to fear. I defy you. Go your own way. Don't worship God. And then stare at death. Go to death. Or wait for Him to come to you. Go without God, and then you'll know fear. Or you can fear God, and then when death comes, have no fear. There's no sense in fearing anything if you fear God. And I assure you, if you don't follow Jesus, if you don't think anything that God has to say is important, then on your deathbed, remember the 10 Commandments, and I bet that you'll think that those were really simple things and you had wished you had done them. Or you can go your own way. There are a myriad of things in life that will ruin your life, that will maim your life, that will destroy your life. And when they come, will you call on God? And when you call on God, will He answer? Or will you get a busy signal? Will you have traded the phone number for God for a day off, for a paycheck, for a little bit of whatever you thought was important at that moment. My guess is that when all those things in life come that you might fear, you'll wish you had cleansed your house. You'll wish that you had taken the opportunity to worship. You'll wish you had taken the opportunity at the offering plate. You'll wish you had taken this opportunity in Lent to remove the distractions, to drive out whatever would come between you and your Lord, between you and your salvation.